The Semicon China 2026 floor plan is a printed grid of booth assignments, and it is on the table now. It records, with the indifferent precision of a seating chart, who showed up to this Shanghai trade show in the spring of 2026, and who chose a smaller footprint. The surface reading is an industry gathering. The deeper reading, reached by moving through the procurement data underneath, is a record of a policy producing the exact condition it was designed to prevent. The layers run from booth presence to fab procurement share, through equipment qualification, and finally to the supply chain topology that now holds the structure together. That last layer is the one the booth count does not advertise. From the outer surface to the deepest cut, the object stays the same: the Semicon China 2026 floor plan and the procurement logic it indexes. The floor plan does not argue, it records. The outermost layer is what any attendee could observe walking the hall. Chinese semiconductor equipment suppliers dominated the exhibitor floor in booth count and in floor area. Major Western suppliers, including Applied Materials and the Dutch lithography maker, maintained reduced visibility. This is the observation recorded in a May 2026 analysis from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, framed explicitly as analyst observation rather than an independently audited measurement of booth square footage. The detail worth holding is that trade shows are procurement signals as much as marketing events. Suppliers invest floor space proportional to their commercial expectations in a given market. A reduced footprint from Western suppliers is not a branding decision made in isolation. It reflects a calculation about where orders will originate. The geometry of the 2026 floor records who anticipates being bought, and that expectation is now weighted toward domestic Chinese firms in a market that, not many years earlier, was weighted the other way. The next layer down is the procurement data that the floor presence indexes. According to the same analysis, domestic equipment's share of procurement by Chinese fabs has risen sharply in recent years. The precise percentage and its rate of change are drawn primarily from company disclosures and analyst estimates. No comprehensive independent audit of Chinese fab procurement exists in open sources, and that qualification matters for everything that follows. What the analysis describes, hedged appropriately, is a directional shift of meaningful scale. Chinese fabs did not move toward domestic equipment because it was cheaper or technically superior across every category at the outset. They moved toward it because the alternative supply chain became unreliable under export control pressure, and reliability of supply carries unusual weight in capital equipment decisions. A single tool disruption can halt an entire process node. The procurement shift is a rational response to a changed risk calculus, not a preference expressed independently of policy. The rise in domestic procurement share can be rendered in a concrete way. A modern fab operates across roughly 100 major process tool categories. A sharp increase in domestic share means the number of those categories now sourced domestically has moved from a small minority toward something approaching or exceeding half. That is a quantity closer to filling a full side of a standard room than to occupying a corner of it. The floor plan shows the commercial surface of that shift. The procurement list underneath is what generated it. One layer deeper sits equipment qualification, and this is where the supply chain arithmetic either holds or collapses. For a domestic tool to appear in fab procurement at scale, it must pass process qualification, a technically demanding and time-consuming validation that requires a tool to demonstrate it can process wafers to specification before it is allowed to touch a production line. A fab can mandate domestic procurement through policy or commercial pressure. It cannot mandate that wafers pass electrical test. The fact that the floor plan shows domestic dominance rather than domestic presence alongside parallel foreign withdrawal implies that qualification campaigns have cleared at least at the process nodes where Chinese fabs are currently operating at volume. The analysis suggests this is happening across multiple tool categories, though yield and performance data for domestically equipped lines at advanced nodes remain either proprietary or unverified by independent parties. The restriction set the engineering target. The qualification campaigns determined which targets turned out to be reachable within the time available. The deepest layer is the supply chain topology itself, and here the analysis from the Center for Strategic and International Studies reaches a conclusion that inverts the standard framing of export controls as a mechanism that slows development. What the analysis describes is a condition in which the export control regime created a closed experimental environment inside Chinese fabs. every process that previously depended on a Western tool had to be re-engineered around a domestic alternative. That re-engineering produced qualified substitutes. The qualified substitutes populated procurement lists, and those procurement lists filled the Semicon China 2026 floor. The buried structural fact is this: the export control list, updated periodically by Western governments to specify which tools were forbidden, functioned simultaneously as a specification of which tools needed to exist domestically. Each restricted tool category defined the next domestic engineering priority with more precision than any industrial policy document could have managed independently. Consider a water main rerouted around a blocked section. The blockage does not stop the flow, it determines the path the new pipe takes. The shape of the domestic equipment industry is the shape of the blockage expressed in steel and silicon. That is the one analogy this dissection needs because the mechanism it describes is not intuitive, and the physical image makes the structural logic concrete. The dissection has limits the sample does not resolve. The Center for Strategic and International Studies Analysis is an analyst reading of observable signals, including booth counts, procurement disclosures, and industry interviews, and is not an audited accounting of fab tool inventories. Chinese equipment firms and their fab customers have measurable incentives to present substitution progress favorably. The company reported procurement figures that underlie the sharp share claim have not been reconciled against production output data or yield statistics that would confirm the tools are performing at par with what they replaced. It is possible that domestic equipment now dominates procurement by unit count or by spend, while foreign-sourced tools, where they remain accessible through channels that controls have not closed, still handle the most technically demanding process steps. That bifurcation, if it exists, is not visible in the floor plan. The dissection also cannot settle the trajectory question. Whether qualification campaigns succeeding at current process nodes will extend to the most advanced nodes Chinese fabs are attempting to develop, or whether there is a performance ceiling at which domestic substitution stalls and the gap to the frontier remains fixed. The Semicon China 2026 floor plan records the state of the industry in spring of 2026. It does not record the state of wafers coming off domestically equipped lines, and that process data, if it exists in verifiable form, is not yet available in open sources. What the sample shows is structural change in procurement and commercial presence. What it does not show is whether that structural change has translated into equivalent process capability at the frontier, and that question is open. Placed on the table, the Semicon China 2026 floor plan reads as follows. A policy instrument calibrated to slow a technology transfer produced over several years of enforcement, a precise map of the capabilities that needed to be built domestically, and the industry built them. The restriction did not stop the development, it directed it. That is what the layers taken together establish, not that controls failed through evasion or circumvention, but that they functioned as an engineering specification for the industry they were aimed at. The floor plan in Shanghai is where that specification became visible to everyone at once, recorded in booth assignments with the indifferent precision of a seating chart. The next object worth opening is the domestic equipment itself, a specific Chinese deposition or etch tool that has appeared on a fab procurement list, taken apart layer by layer to determine whether the qualification it passed reflects parity with the tool it replaced or a process window that simply accepted a narrower margin. If you have a candidate tool in mind, name it in the comments. If this kind of dissection is useful to you, subscribe and turn on notifications because the next object is already on the table.